Councillors, welcome to our first council meeting for 2026, being Tuesday the 27th of January at 11 a.m. Just got a couple of comments I'd like to make as we start before I go through the normal health and safety procedures. But you're right and welcome to the year of 2026. I trust that you all have had a relaxing break and likely are looking forward to contributing to the district of Hurunui. This year is likely to be a year that will draw on our collective resources to ensure we deliver on a range of outcomes. The first is obviously to ensure that the momentum of the WISCO, with its strong focus on the outcomes, will bring benefit to our people, and we can demonstrate that the value of this collaboration through successful and measured results. We need to prepare and respond to the government's reform with simplifying local government, and that submission is due on the 20th of February. The rate capping proposal, and that's due on the 4th of February. The RM reform and the development of the Planning Act and the Natural Environment Act is due on the 13th of February. And the Emergency Management Bill, which is due on the 4th of February. So to kick us off for the year, we're in a pretty intensive time frame. And we also need to understand the implications for our district in Canterbury as a region. We also must keep our focus on delivery of our own plans and progress key infrastructure, climate adaptation and economic development. And while all of this is going on, we need to stay closely connected to our communities, keep people at the centre of our decision making, strengthen the engagement with our towns, our rural communities, iwi and business groups. We must aim to be visible, accessible and responsive, and I want to build a resilient and adaptive council that supports our staff through the uncertainty of reform. I want to foster collaboration with neighbouring councils and ensure governance remains transparent, stable and trusted. So I just wanted to start the year with that, sort of just to spell out, I guess, what is in front of us and how important it is for us to work as a unit. We don't need to agree on all things all of the time, but we actually do need to work as a unit. And by doing that, we need to support and respect the staff that provide us the guidance to make good decisions, because inevitably, they will be looking at reform and what that might mean for them as well. So I would like us to stand firm, I want us to be strong, and I want us to have a year like no other, but when we get to the end of 26 and beyond, know that we've done the very best we can for the district that we serve. So they are my hopes and dreams, I guess, and I just thought I'd share them. Excuse me. But we have got a full agenda. Well, it's actually probably not as full as what some other agendas may be, but actually we will manage that in the best interest of our community. Nothing has changed from 2025 to 26, and the health and safety matters that we need to understand are the same, but for interest of our own personal safety, should we need to exit the building, you know that it's either out the door here to my left or the door that you entered, and our assembly point is over by the St John's. And I guess the stop, drop and hold scenario is still in action should we need that, and hopefully that doesn't occur. But it does make us think about, you know, the New Zealand as a whole and the trauma that some of our councils, but actually some people within our councils are coping with at the moment. And I do think about Tauranga, and you know, they're going through a pretty tough time along the whole of the East Coast with some they are plenty with some rain. So you know, our minds are with our friends and colleagues up in the North Island. We got a full suite of councillors around the table today, so we don't have any apologies to receive, so that's pretty cool. And we have got our affirmation that will get us focused and help us think about what we have ahead of us. So we all will pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skills, wisdom and judgment throughout the discussions and deliberations ahead of us today, in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of the Hurunui district at large. We commit individually and as council to the principles of integrity and respect, and to upholding the values that we believe distinguish and enrich our district. Thank you. Normal proceeding is to identify any conflicts of interest, and I'm probably guessing Pauline and myself sit on the membership of the District Licensing Committee, but Pauline is way more engaged in that committee than what I am. So we'll note that, Pauline.
Yeah, just a perception of a conflict of interest, so but it is in regards to.
Yeah, thank you. That's cool. So we've got that. Is there any other conflicts of interest? I would just like to identify that in the public excluded item 8.2, the appointment of trustees for Enterprise North Canterbury. I sat on the interview panel for that process, so I just want to identify that as in an open and transparent manner. So thank you. Graham hasn't changed his procedures, so we've still got a recording device, and we're being live streamed for that. So thank you. We've got no separately circulated information, so it should be all in your agenda pack. Nothing here is there? No, correct. And there is any urgent business for today? Thank you. That's great. I'll talk to you later about the issue we talked about earlier. Thank you. So, councillors, that takes us through to minutes. We've got two sets of minutes actually. We've got our council meeting on the 16th of December, starting on page 4, and then we've got the temporary road closure, which involved a couple of councillors. So, if we just do a normal page turn for, excuse me, the council meeting, excuse me, on the 16th of December, page 4 and 5. So, I'm just looking for accuracy here, councillors. Page 4 and 5. Page 6 and 7, page 8 and 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, through to page 19. Is there anybody that they've got any clarity for accuracy? Graham, that's fantastic. You did a great job again on that. So with that, councillors, is someone willing to move that we receive those full set of minutes as a true and accurate record? Actually, Steve, you weren't in attendance for that, so yeah, so I won't take that. You don't mind, so you were here, present. So you're happy to move that? Thank you, Chris Scarlett. So all in agreement to that we receive those minutes as true and accurate, please say aye. Aye. Those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. Likewise, we'll just flick through. Just stop me quickly if there's any matters arising from those minutes. I'm just going to do it briskly. Page 4, 5, 6, 7. Thanks, Pauline.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Page 5, under matters arising, I requested an update on the Grierson Avenue proposal for the potential realignment of Confluence Road, and we did discuss that in public excluded. I just wondered, I'm aware that the Mayor, CEO and all councillors have received some correspondence asking for an update from the golf club, and if I could have any information as to whether a response has been sent.
Sure.
And if so, when, and could we have a copy?
Yes, I have drafted a letter, and I just wanted to double check a paragraph or so that I put in that, and so I've just received it. So that will be out by the end of the week, but I'm just mindful that Joe's got a couple of days off as well, but it will be out, and I will send a copy to all of you.
Thank you, and I will ask again in public excluded for an update there. Just aware that the sea did come over the road in the weekend as well, and I think, I'm not sure of all councillors, but certainly Southwood councillors
right
advised of that.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll carry on, councillors. Any other matters arising? I'm looking at page 6 and 7, page 8 and 9, 10 and 11. And it's just actually on page 12, where it's under the deputation for the Amberley Beach residents. The letter has been sent to the in regard to, there was a correct request prior to that deputation, but it incorporated some of the information shared, I guess, during that deputation, so that has been done. 12, 13, oh, beg your pardon, sorry, Pauline. I'm sorry, Robbie.
So can I just double check, and I know I should know this, the response that was sent, or the letter that was sent to the Amberley Beach ratepayers, was that provided to all councillors?
That was because Hamish wrote that letter in regard because it was an operational context, so
I know I received
maybe
a
not.
copy, but I just wondered if it was appropriate, given that we'd had a deputation that all councillors
we'll follow
received.
that through and we'll make sure that happens.
Thank you.
It's probably also really important for councillors to know that there is a lot of email goes out from on behalf of the district. You know that there has to be an element of understanding that goes on. So just as it's the nature of the business, but we'll make sure that goes out to all councillors.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Robbie. Covered. Okay. So 12, 13, 14, 15. 16, 17. Thank you. Hands up on this corner. What do you guys have for breakfast? Robbie first and then Paul.
Go for it. Possibly going to ask the same question.
Okay, thanks, Robbie. Go.
Third paragraph down, I just, and this is the.
What page are you on?
Page 16. I just wondered if there'd been anything coming out or more to come from the bowling club.
Yeah. I mean, I had a squiggle, so it's probably your question.
Snap.
As well. So perhaps I'm going to throw to Jason. This was in regard to the bowling club seeking some sort of financial support or whatever. So you were going to get back to them. Can you give us a bit of an update?
I got back to them on the call before Christmas. They did respond. They haven't come back requesting safe at the moment, because the key was to be able to provide them an option as they went into their meeting. I think at this stage they're probably going to do it themselves with them, but we've given them some ability for them to come with a firmer proposal that was really giving them an option that they could rely.
Okay, so at this point we're waiting. They will come back to us if there is a requirement for that to happen. So it sits with the Amberley Bowling Club at this stage. Everybody happy with that? Perfect. Thanks, Jason. I guess, and maybe following on from you guys as well, but as an outcome from that discussion, we talked about asking officers to come back with a draft policy regarding the provision of loans to community groups. So I'm not sure whether that's progressed or not, but I guess I just want to keep it in the work stream, that's all.
Yeah, a couple of changes that I know I need to make to our treasury policy, which I'll try and bring forward and incorporate that as part of it.
Yeah.
That's also
okay. Yeah. And look, and I guess will that come straight to council? Will it go to Audit and Risk first and then come to council? And policy we'll leave that with you. Yeah, because I constantly get the treasury like these. Anyway, I'll leave it with you, but I guess it's important for us to understand. I think, Chris, you brought that up, like giving some direction, because it's very difficult to be Father Christmas to everybody all the time, as much as we want to. But we're going to carry on 16, 17, 18, 19. So no other matters arising in those set of minutes. Perfect. Thank you, team. That's fantastic. So that takes us on to page 20 and 21, and this is for the temporary road closure subcommittee. So that involved Councillor Tom Davies and Councillor Pauline White. Probably Graham, I need to email you this because it's a venue that talks about in council chambers, but it's actually a correction to those minutes. It should be online. So I'll probably just throw to Tom and Pauline to look at the accuracy of those minutes. I'm pretty happy to accurately reflect the meeting. Either one of you happy to move and second? That would keep them true and accurate. Tom happy to move, Pauline happy to second. That's cool, thank you. So all in agreement that we received that, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that's carried, thank you. And I guess the only matters arising, the Euduro, how do you say that, Tom? The Hemel Springs Adventure Run, yeah, that was cancelled in the end, so that event never went ahead. So, but of course, the Amberley Market Street Festival was coming up quite soon. Anything else to add to that, you guys?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay, that's, we've dealt with those, so that's fantastic, thank you. We have got the Known Forward Work Programme that's in front of you, our presentation, so we've got the Runaway Biodiversity Group and James Cagle from Waka Kaupaki coming to our next 3rd February meeting. And we've got a bit there, but I'm guessing that will sort of get populated as the exec team sort of mixes up. Yep, so we're expecting some, that will happen over the next wee while. You're comfortable with that, so you understand that, no questions around that. The Mayor's Diary, is there any questions in regard to that? I don't think there was anything too far out of the. Actually, this is really social, but I was invited to the Waipara Adventure Centre for the Camp Purple, and that was a national event for children or young people under 5 to 20 who suffer from Crohn's or colitis. And they had a full team of doctors and nurses and dietitians, and they asked me to go and help them judge some competitions, which was really hard. But these amazing children that are coping with, you know, a daily intervention of dietary or infecting their personal lives, and I was very heartened by the fact that they loved it at Waipara, they loved the Adventure Centre, and they booked in for 2 years' time. And talking to one, they're doing a lot of research, but it was a great privilege to be invited to go and support these young people and their support people at this national event. So yeah, just not strictly, you know, council core business, but actually it probably is what it's all about. So yeah, I think Claire Mackay, I took Fiona with me on that day. We had a bit of a discussion, and that's really is about regional restructure from an Environment Canterbury. There was a discussion, personal discussion, I suppose, more than a strategic discussion, but I think that's probably all that needs to be discussed there. And if there's no questions, can I please ask for someone to move that we receive those 2 reports?
Just a question.
Yeah.
What was FENS? What happened there? I'm just curious because it's a bit close to my heart.
Okay, so that was a meeting that was it's been a wee while in the making, and it's really in regard to the lease agreement with the Scargill fire unit or the building. And so probably about it's probably been in the prep for about 4 months, I suppose. I've talked to Fiona about it. So and it was supposed to happen before Christmas. We're supposed to, so the FENS came to me because the lease agreement with the Scargill Fire Brigade expired in 2022. So FENS were looking to get an active FENS agreement in place again, and so I went to the Scargill fire team, and my suggestion at that point was actually FENS and the locals need to sit around the table. So that was a sit around the table, and we had a follow up to that just last Monday, and as a follow up to that, and the community of Scargill are happy to, you know, progress the lease agreement. So our guys will talk to their guys, and that will progress. So it was about the language that was being used. There was a lot of language talked about ownership, but actually it wasn't about ownership. It was actually getting a piece of paper that was a relevant and up-to-date lease agreement. So,
Thank you.
so that was just a facilitation of the meeting of the minds, really.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Should I get a move in the second? No, happy to move it. Yep. Happy to second it. Thank you, Tom. All in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Vote against, that's carried. Thank you. Radio. We are at our first decision item, and you will note that it's the interim statement of expectation by Kaikoura Hurunui Water Services. Significance is high, and I support that where that is, I can't remember. So agree with the high. Thank you, Claire. And, you know, this has been a long time coming. There is a lot of work that's been done, and there's been a lot of work to done. And Claire, I think that you've held the pen primarily with support from the rest of our team here, but I'm really grateful that you've given us and helped us, guide us through this as we meet some of these critical deadlines. So this is another one of the important deadlines, I guess, as we develop an interim statement of expectations. So this has been passed the reference group, and you've got a copy of that in your report as well. So Claire, I'm going to hand it over to you as you can guide us through this, and we'll take some questions, and then we'll see where we get to. How does that sound? Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As mentioned by Madam Mayor, the period, this is an interim statement of expectations. It means it covers a period of no more than 6 months, at which time we will then need to have a statement of expectations. There are some particular features of it being an interim statement of expectations, which I will highlight as we go through it. Murray and Vincent were part of the group which reviewed it, along with 2 of the councillors from Kaikoura and both chief executives. So this statement sets out what we're expecting of the company and covers a number of things which are mandatory in the legislation and some other things which are optional in the legislation and some things we just thought were a good idea. It has also been reviewed by the lawyers. So it sets out how we work together. It sets out our strategic priorities, which includes obviously service provision and meeting regulatory obligations. It sets out the financial principles we are expecting the company to abide by. For example, working towards funding depreciation, covering its long-term costs. It looks at the outcomes we're expecting for the establishment phase, because it's only going to go for 6 months. It's not looking for the longer term outcomes in this particular document. They will come later. And it talks about how we're going to collect revenue, which is going to be that councils will be collecting revenue on behalf of the company. One of the unusual things about this document, which will not apply next time round, is because it's an interim statement of expectations, we're allowed to make directions to the company. We have made some directions to the company. We have directed that they will employ the current water services staff on the same terms and conditions on day 1. Now, what they do on day 2 is up to them, because they're running the company. But it means that it gives some surety to the staff that they will have a job. And it also says that there will be shared services agreements between the company and the councils, which will mean that the staff who are currently doing things like customer services and finance and HR and things will continue to do customer services and finance and HR on behalf of the organisation. And there will be a payment made between the company and the councils in order to recognise that that does cost the councils to provide those services. It also says that there will novate contracts relating to water services from the councils to the company. Again, what they do after that is up to them. But it means that we're not running around terminating all the contracts we've currently got with suppliers. We will be entering into new supplier agreements on behalf of the company, and that's another topic which we won't do today. It also says what we'll have in our half-yearly report, what information we want to collect from the company. Now, this is a bit of a balancing act. Obviously, we're interested in everything the company does, but it's the board's job to govern, and our job is to oversee the activities of the company at a higher level, and so it is fairly high level what we're expecting. And we've also said we'd like them to operate initially in line with the water services delivery plan and the long-term plan. It means that what we've got in our long-term plan doesn't disappear on 1 July 26. However, it's a guiding thing. It does, I mean, they're not bound to the letter that we're going to spend exactly this amount on this particular project. So that's basically what's in the interim statement of expectations. There is another thing that I've got in the resolutions here is that there are recommended we will have a couple of changes to the shareholders agreement that we agreed in December. On having our statement of expectations reviewed by the lawyers, they thought that for a belts and braces approach, it would be better to adapt the shareholders agreement so it aligned with the ability to give directions. So it now says that in the statement of expectations, we're allowed to include the things that are noted there, which were not previously in the shareholders agreement, that we should do that. Both Hamish and I think we could probably have included them anyway, but the lawyer said it'd be just safe to put them in, so we are. So we are making directions in accordance with the statute, and we've made a change to the shareholders agreement that reflects that also. Any questions?
Thanks, Claire. So through question time, we'll just work this diligently through so we get a better understanding. I'll start with you, Brett. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could just ask, just on page 31, on paragraph 3, it speaks about any decisions that might be made which might be a significant departure from the shareholder council's long-term plans. Can you just sort of clarify or explain to me what you mean by that? So they're not bound by either of the long-term plans that Kaikoura have or we have, and that that they're expected to advise any major departures from our long-term plan, but they don't have to.
The statement of expectations is purely their expectations, but if they do a whole lot of things that we're not expecting them to do, or we're likely to be wanting to have a conversation with the directors. Yeah.
Just to follow that through, Brett, as well, I mean, Claire and or Hamish, would you expect if there is a huge departure that would form part of the discussion when it talks here about ongoing relationship between the directors and the CEs? One would expect that would be signalled and, you know, flagged at that point, because, you know, what you're saying is we don't want no surprises.
No, it's significant.
Does that make it clear for you?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You want anything to add there?
No, I mean, well, yes, that's correct. I mean, you operate on a no surprises basis in these situations. You are the shareholder as a company. You don't want to shock your shareholders with something you've done. You want to have a discussion with them beforehand. Otherwise, the relationship breaks down, and you appoint the directors of the company, and you can disappoint them.
Thank you, Brett. Vince, thank you.
Absolutely. On page 26, number 12, the statement of expectation must not include any of the requirements. Well, service provision, well, we'd expect to be able to say something, wouldn't we? I'm just wondering what's the worth of it, because all the important things we're not allowed to have in it. So what's the point of it? Because if you're not allowed to have service provision, that we expect a certain service, asset management, finances, even, you know, that we expect them to run, we can't even say we expect them to be prudent with the finances. If you got any comments to, I know it's in the legislation, but it doesn't actually, what we thought we could put things like that into the expectations for the company, but to me it reads like we can't. What's the point of it all?
Okay, thanks, Vince. So what you're seeking is perhaps some clarity around how much, I guess, influence this statement of expectation has, and where there might be some misgivings, maybe. So I'm going to perhaps have Claire and or Hamish.
Just the way I read it,
Okay, so you're wanting some, you're wanting clarity, or you're wanting confidence that actually we're covered up. Yeah.
Now, what we've done is we've focused on outcomes, because that's what we are allowed to talk about, and we are allowed to talk about that in the context of services. So it's not about how to provide the service, but about what the impact of doing so will be competent. For example, things about making sure we comply with all the regulators' requirements and we provide services, etc. We can't comment on finances and the level of detail I think you might be looking for, but we have actually said quite a lot about finances in terms of the statement of expectations, in terms of financial principles. We're not allowed to say you're going to make a profit of this amount of money, or you're We've got pretty close, however, with our statement about funding depreciation. The lawyer didn't strike it down.
And is that even in regard to, you know, the statement around expectation of, you know, no dividends and, you know, I mean, that's our expectation when we've been explicit in that, in those, in this paperwork, I guess. But, you know, how that might be managed in year 12 or 20 might be different to what it is in year 1 or year 2. But, you know, that we've been tried to be quite explicit around, you know, that financial management, I guess.
This is only for 6 months.
Yeah.
The reason for signalling those other financial principles was because they're going to start working on their water services strategy. That's their equivalent of the long-term plan. And when they do that, we would like them to bear in mind the sorts of things that we're going to comment on when we see it, because we're allowed to comment on the water services strategy. So we're giving them a heads up in here, but this is only for 6 months. And they won't have finished the water services strategy in 6 months. Hamish?
Yeah, look, I think the important thing in here is that we can't tell them how to do stuff, but we can tell them what outcomes we expect. So if we expect them to break even, we can say we expect you to break even without telling them how to break even. We can say that we expect water charges to be prudent and reasonable, without telling them how much they're allowed to charge. So it's about what we expect, and it's the same with service levels, you know. We expect that CCO will provide a level of service that that communities are satisfied with. These are general expectations that we have of our water services CCO, and we can do them as far as outcomes, but we can't tell them how to do that.
I suppose it's, you know, for us as government sitting around the table, actually what we've got to do is try and conceptualise, or, you know, in a much higher level of how I think we can try and support to deliver the outcome that we're seeking without actually being able to identify the mechanics of how that's going to.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got to lift our governance eyes a little bit higher to try and get that result at this point.
But remember, this is the statement of expectations, and then there'll be ongoing conversation with this organisation, both through the council and at a staff level. And so, if you have concerns about something that's happening, then you can either voice it through me or directly to the organisation, without directing them what to do, because you can't direct them. But if you were to say to me as a council that we're very unhappy about this, we think the pricing is wrong, etc., then it becomes incumbent on me to sit down with the general manager of the organisation and have that conversation and say, we don't think you've got this right.
Vince, I'll come to you in a minute, Chris. Vince, does that help your situation of understanding?
Just sounds like the expectations have got no teeth to them. That's how I take it, but you know, it's a bit like the United Nations. And, you know, what happens to them if it doesn't? You know, what can the council do if they just
Your ultimate power is to get rid of the directors and appoint new directors.
Yeah.
More likely to think.
Yeah. I was, you know, I mean, just to try and work through, because I think, you know, your questions is valid. We need to understand that we are, but, you know, we have confidence that this is going to set us up in the first 6 months of delivery. But when I read this through on appendix number 1, you know, it gave me a level of confidence knowing that there was going to be critical times, I can't find it now, where engagement with, I guess it's just what we've just spoken about, Hamish, you know, that regular contact with the CE to the company GM or whoever, you know, there's always, you know, those critical lines of communication are going to be the thing that actually achieves the outcome that we're all seeking as shareholders. So I think that's where you're heading. Does that make sense? Are you comfortable?
Well, it's just the way the legislation's been written, really. Takes away. You know, I'm just saying it's not our staff, it's not anything. It's just the way that the legislation's been written. Really, we have no say. we can make up nice expectations, but we really haven't got any.
And I guess the other, you know, I mean, we've talked about this at length at the last meeting, you know, when we had Mark Codman online. You know, the two other governing factors other than relationship between the CE and the GM and us as shareholders is the influence of the Commerce Commission in pricing and or Te Mata Arawai as in water regulation. So, you know, there's another two major factors that are going to be influential of, you know, how we achieve the outcomes that we expect, you know, but there is a different degree of separation to what we currently know at things. And that's the pathway that we're on.
Just as long as we go in with our eyes open.
Yeah. Thank you for raising that. I'm going to move on if you're happy. Did I see your hand up and then Robbie? Chris?
Through the chair, a question in the office recommendations.
Sorry, Chris. I'll go Chris Carthy, Robbie, and then Chris Scarlett. Thank you. I didn't see you.
Thank you. Chair, the officer's recommendation point 2, clause 8 is being amended by appendix 2. When I read through appendix 2 and looked at the way it's drafted, I have a few queries over it. So you can catch up to page 39 is where the appendix 2 is. Unless the shareholders otherwise agree, you can read it for yourselves. The question I have is, with including, well, I'll start the question again. What's your interpretation of that statement? Please.
Okay, it might help to refer back to what was actually in the shareholders agreement.
Which I have right here,
Previous
which
one.
I've read, and I trust everyone in the room is okay with.
At the time we wrote that, the intention was that the two councils would separately prepare a statement of expectations. Since that time, we have had further legal advice, and it is now apparent that there cannot be two statements of expectations because the statements of expectation are binding, which is not the case of what we have with other council-controlled organisations, where we have a statement of expectations and then we have a statement of intent, and it's the statement of intent that's got the teeth. So, but this is now saying that the two councils will work together to develop a statement of expectations.
So instead of two documents, it'll be one document.
Yes.
That's what we're saying. Yep.
I do have a follow-up question. Thank you for your response. It includes us consulting with the company. I imagine that is the Waco. Is that what you're referring to in that point? So their influence will be on this as far as discussion notes, yes?
Mm-hmm. They get to provide input, they don't get to determine what's in it. That's in the legislation
And as
as
you,
well.
and in your own words, you commented very clearly that it's expectation, so it has no teeth at this point, this document really in long term.
There is an obligation on the directors to give effect to the statement of expectations. So it's not no teeth at all. The teeth are primarily in the appointment of the directors. But this has got more teeth than a statement of expectations would normally have, because it is in the legislation that the directors must give effect to it.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. Robbie, your question?
Yeah, page 37, 18.1, I just wanted the copy of the monthly operating report come back to CEOs. I'm wondering whether we might get a summary or an overview or something like that of ops, perhaps if it was relevant, just for just I realise it's not for ops or council to be interfering at all, but just to know how things are going. And then page 39, referencing around reporting coming back on one of the shareholders' websites. Is that around just not having them have their own and sort of set up that whole new employees and equipment and all the rest? That's just a cost-cutting thing, I'd imagine.
So this is your statement of expectations, not the company's, and so this is for us to publish on our website so that our community knows what expectations we put in place for the WISCO.
May I speak to that also?
Mm-hmm.
This published on the website of at least one shareholder is out of the legislation. So we just picked it up and stuck it in.
That's a minimum
So
requirement,
that's,
probably,
it's there,
it's, I mean, I expect that both shareholders will
yeah.
put it on their website, but at least one has to.
Yeah, I just wondered whether, you know, if every organisation you start padding it up with all this different stuff, all of a sudden they have websites and maybe down the track they have to, with customers asking questions and things, but I just wondered, you know, how much do you load these things? How much do you use what you've already got either side of it?
I guess that statement's talking about the, even the shareholders' website, not the, if there is a company website sometime in the future, but this is about being on at least one of the shareholders, which is us. Or I call it in this instance, isn't it? Yeah, or both, yeah.
I note that this is, that what is going on the website is the process for preparing the statement of expectations, not the expectations itself.
Robbie, has that answered your question? So, although your first one talked about something coming to ops, and I guess that's something that, you know, might be a consideration, but it's probably not, it's not a council business unit anymore, so that there's some delicacies, I guess, that, so I'm probably just going to leave that with you, Hamish, with, you know, to see where that.
Yeah, look, I would think if the thing's ticking along okay and as governors, happy at a governance level, it would be if there's real problems in the organisation that we start, that, you know, council felt that it needed answers on, it might be appropriate, but, you know, you're no longer in control or able to direct what's happening there. You can only work by influence. So, it wouldn't, I don't think it goes on the agenda quite right, but I just think we need to be careful about how we handle that information.
Yeah, that's fine.
Chris Gale.
Oh, it was more just a observation than a question, just in reply to Vince's question. My understanding was government at the time's policy was really to take water services out of council control, which is why all this was set up. And as you say, we do lose control of it, but ultimately that was the aim of the government at the time, to get that out of our control. And as you say, we can give a wee bit of direction through an expectation. But it's really up to that new company to deliver those water services, and if that's going to be done any better or worse than what it is now, time will tell.
And you're right, Chris, because actually this has been a long journey. It's actually crossed over to central government strategies, with Three Waters under the previous government and local water done well. And for many of us sitting around the table, many councils, can't remember the numbers, joined as a collect 32 out of the, joined a group called Communities for Local Democracy. This is what we're achieving now, is almost a reflection of the advocacy from councils like ours that sat in that space to try and get the best we could under a challenging new framework, and this is what we're working through. And not perfect, not and you know, we can't foresee what the future will be, but we're doing our very best to ensure that our community is going to get and receive the outcomes that we've always achieved, not without considerable expense, but actually that's what we need to view into the future. Yeah, thanks for your comment, Chris.
Very quick question again through the chair, if I may. Sorry, fixate on this appendix 2. I apologise on that. Will 8.2 still remain in there because the overstatement says remove the rate? I'm just wondering if section 8.2 compliance will remain. It's on the original statement of expectation that we had last year. It's in the printed form which I had in my hand. Compliance, shareholders, wing size, your rights.
Yeah, just give you a chance to get that information.
All right.
So what you're saying is, does the recommendation That's what you're
What I'm
questioning?
asking is if section 8.2, after the initial statement back on page, excuse me, right there with me, officer's recommendation, clause 8, which oversees the entire expectations clause, there's no mention or a reverberation of 8.2, which is in the original note, and I'd just like to know if it remains or has it been removed?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you,
Just
that's
want
all,
some
it's pretty
clarity.
straightforward. Thank you.
I would need to come back to you.
Yeah, okay.
I haven't got that number in my mind, unfortunately.
Oh, really? That's interesting, thank you.
I've got different versions here.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah. Okay, I just really respect the information that Claire has got and has diligently worked through, so I don't want to put Claire under, I mean, I think we can get that
It's
question.
here in the original notes, that's why I've asked the question.
Yeah, get the question answered, but I just need to make sure that we give our staff enough time to sufficiently work through to ensure that we get that information. So I guess we've got a couple of options. We could take a bit of a pause to get that information. Would that suit you best, Claire?
One more, I've got another place where I can find, just 1 second, please.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Here we go.
And then the- I'm just wondering if it's for our staff to actually get that information. I just wonder if we take an adjournment for 5 minutes to give our staff a chance to get that information.
I
So
think I'm just about there, just 1 second.
you sure? Okay.
Sorry about this.
You sure?
I might need a 5 minute.
Okay, look, I think what we will do, we'll take an adjournment, it's 11:45, and if we adjourn this meeting to allow our staff to get the information they required, 10 minutes. Okay, so we will be back at,
Apologies about this thing.
no, you're fine, 11:55. Okay, so thank you, councillors, that we took a 10-minute adjournment just to seek further clarity and information in regard to the paper interim statement of expectations. And so what I'm going to do now is we have the question from councillor Carthy in regard to 8.2, and that was inclusive in the shareholders agreement agreed at the last meeting. And I'm going to ask Claire if you can perhaps respond to that, or just
Before you do that, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
8.2 is not included in the shareholders
Yeah.
agreement you referred to in the last meeting.
Yeah,
So,
I beg your pardon, sorry.
so it was in an early draft and isn't in the approved version. I understand that Chris is raising it as an issue for further discussion, but
Yeah.
just to be really clear, it's not in the version that you approved.
So now through that, what we're seeking clarification of the question that's been raised. So are you happy with that? And I'm going to ask Claire for
Thank you,
response.
Madam Chair. Yes, I am, but I'd like to see it re-included. That's the push I'm pushing for today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so we'll get some better understandings from the officer, and then we can have a discussion. Thank you, Claire.
I've now gone back through the lawyer's notes to see why it was that we removed it. And the reason that we removed it was at that time there were going to be 2 statements of expectations, and he did not think that 8.2 was going to be compatible with having 2 statements of expectations. But if we now have 1 statement of expectations, then that feedback that we received didn't apply.
Thank you. I would. Madam Chair, I would like to put forward that we reinstate 8.2 lines into our document going forward. If that would please council.
Okay. So I think what we, that will perhaps need to look at that when we look at the fullness. I might, when we look at the recommendation, I might come to you, Chris, for I might separate out the recommendations. Actually, might be the best way, rather than doing all of these recommendations in their entirety.
So, Madam Mayor, I'll just note that as officers, we don't see any problem at all
No.
with including 8.2.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so if the council
Yeah.
wants to do that, we'll just have to notify
Okay.
Cora so
Yeah.
that they can.
Yeah.
as well.
Okay, so I'm going to come to you for some clarity on what you would like in a minute. So, but I'll ask you to hold that thought process if I can, Chris, because I just want to make sure at the end other questions that haven't been raised to clarify this position. I would like to explore those first, and then we can put the recommendation on the table. So, councillors, have I missed anybody? I think I might have seen your hand come up before, but is there any other questions to clarify? Tom, because I want to, then we can move on with this paper. So thank you.
On page 32. It states that the UKHWS will maintain a focus on the affordability of water services. Now, I remember actually asking the experts, and they said at the time that affordability was not a consideration for setting or incurring costs, and I wondered what was the purpose of the change of that. Well, I'm pleased about that, and I could be honest that we are having a regard to affordability, because at one stage we actually said that it was stated that there was no regard to affordability, that wasn't a guiding factor.
Thank you, Chair.
This here, Madam Mayor, came out of the conversation with the reference group of the 2 councils meeting together. And it is absolutely the case that the requirements of the Commerce Commission would override this. Okay. In terms of ensuring that the long-term costs of providing water services are covered is going to override anything about this. But on the other hand, there is councillor concern about affordability in the regions. So the term focus on affordability is a relatively weak comment compared with the fact that thou shalt abide by the regulation. But it is still there saying that we care about it.
Okay. The other question I did have was on the page 36 on the estimated useful life. And
I'm sure there will be a real explanation for this. But if I was looking at my house maintenance and I thought, I'll need to decorate between the next 10 and 80 years, I find that hugely, or I might need to replace the pipe between 7 and 99 years. I just find those parameters to be so wide, and I'm sure there will be an explanation for it. But, that to me, between 5 and 10 years, I can understand, but between 7 and 99, it just seems so broad to me that, you don't think about your own household maintenance. Oh, I might need to paint it next year or the next 99 years, that sort of, and I can see Jason chomping.
Jason, you can answer that one.
Madam Mayor, I think it's largely trying to contract up the types of assets that we're talking about. Specific assets will have different useful lives depending on the types of it, and it's just a categorisation issue here. We could have 4 or 5 pages of useful lives here. It's just this is a range. We know based on we do utilise some engineering guidance on the useful lives of some assets, and we're always that's to determine the depreciation. The actual useful lives of assets do change depending on the installation type of material used. It's trying to accumulate a lot of information in one space without boring. Not many people look at those accounting policies anyway, but we could make it much more lengthy. But when you drill down, you can see individual line items will have useful lives depending on types and size of the asset. So yeah, I'm not sure whether I've explained that or
No, you have explained it well, but therefore, when you actually have the itemised one that you're not obviously sharing with us, which I can understand, will someone be having regard, say you've got all of those items over the 99 years, will someone be having a regard to say it is fairly evenly spread over those 99 years, or will they actually look and say, crikey, there's a huge, great big bubble at 25 years, when so much needs replacing? There's a little bit before 25 years, a little bit after, but a big bubble at this point. That sort of making sure that planned maintenance and planned useful life is actually considered. It's not just.
Yeah, I will say that we can't avoid bubbles. I know if we've got a raft of pipe that we replaced after the earthquake, it all has an 80-year life. There's going to be a renewal program matching that in 80 years or 75 years. Go back to my old days down at Mackenzie, all of Twizel was put in one time, and all of Twizel's infrastructure would need to be replaced, within a short period of time, theoretically in a short period of time. But there would be adjustments done. You review the condition of the pipes, and if you can get an extra 10 years out of them, even though they've reached the useful life, you would do that to spread the load.
And I would have thought it's not too dissimilar to actually our current practice of our current council. There's many times that we've sat around this table about sweating the assets, getting another year or two out to, before you do a full replacement. So I guess it just gives a window of opportunity. And, I guess the point you're raising is that it seems like a lot of sleeps between, that time frame, but actually it's about the diligence of actually understanding those assets and managing the renewal in an appropriate and financially prudent manner. No, Chris, I'm going to get, I think Claire has a response to that as well, and I'll come back to you.
This section was inserted at the request of the reference group. It is a direct cut and paste out of the annual report. In the next 6 months, it's not altogether clear how this would be applied by the company, but it's possibly useful information. It is, as Jason says, certainly there's a whole broad range underneath this, And the additional information is available in the asset management plans rather than in the annual report. So there's a whole other thing. And I'm quite sure they wouldn't use this for making any decisions at all.
No,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you.
All righty, good discussion, thank you. I just,
I was just really quick, very quickly, I was going to ask, would the LTMP, if it was managed as staggered, would probably remove that problem? Would the chief financial officer agree on that? If in a situation like the LTMP, the long-term management plan, if you staggered, they would naturally stagger these repairs. They wouldn't just dump them. They couldn't, no one can afford to do that. So,
Yeah, I suppose, and there is the discussion around how we fund this more than the actual cost of replacements and the funding, you know, the idea of funding depreciation to start building up a fund to replace those assets when they've reached their useful life is a more consistent way of funding rather than some councils still do fund renewals. So that can be very, very lumpy, and I think that is the case with Kaikoura currently, where they fund the renewals rather than funding the depreciation. So you get a year where you've got a massive amount of renewals required. It does put a strain on the finances at that point. If you're building up the fund, and we're well behind in doing that because we're a long way through the useful lives of a lot of our assets and not built up the depreciation funds to do so. Hence, we've got the level of debt that we do. But yeah, as we move forward, funding for a provision.
thank you.
okay, look, we've had good opportunity for question time to improve our clarity, to improve our understanding, and to yes, support the direction of travel to this interim statement of expectation. The only or the question that has been raised and is that the officer recommendation is sitting on page 24 and 25 would include in bullet point 2 that clause 8 with the inclusion of 8.2 as previously noted in compliance, and that's the question that we raised. So is that have I heard you correctly?
Yes, yes, Madam Mayor, I wish to place I'm asking for 8.2 to be reinstated.
Correct. Okay. So, look, is there any concern around that? If that's if I'd like to get a recommendation on the table, and maybe Chris, I'm going to look for you to move the recommendation inclusive of 8.2 compliance as previously noted in previous documentation, which is the compliance which you've all got in front of you, councillors. So, you're happy with the wording with that inclusion? You understand that?
I am happy with the inclusion, knowing that we will re-replicate 8.2 as seen in the previous document, dated the 2nd of the 12th, 2025, that I've forwarded and has been distributed. I'd like to see it reinstated in the statement of expectations going forward. So I would like to recommend that.
Okay, so the officer recommendation is inclusive of what's written, inclusive of 8.2. We have a mover to that. Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, Mayor, can I just clarify where we're inserting it to
Under A, clause
A.
Clause 8, shareholder agreement will be, and I'm thinking the wording will be replaced with the text in appendix 2 to this report, inclusive of 8.2 compliance, which was an earlier version dated back in the 2nd of the 12th. Discussion. Okay, so I have a mover. Do I have a seconder?
No, but I'd like to make a comment before we do, because otherwise we could end up with things to go around the bushes on amendments and things. I'm happy with all that, but that type of statement to avoid the perception of council driving from the back seat, as it were, to me would usually say that the shareholders may exercise, not will. I'll be happy with that one word changed.
Madam Chair, I would disagree with that entirely because wording is part of the words when legal documents are drafted. to soften the power of the word by using one change diminishes the paragraph entirely. And I would object, and I would suggest the room considers that very carefully with respect to my letter friend.
Around that, I'll just do that to the consider that. Lean and I'm still probably looking for question time and get a resolution on the table, but anyway.
Yeah, oh look, I would support the wording as councillor Carthy has put it forward, because the shareholders will of course be coming up with these expectations, so that removes for me the council in the background feeling, and it will encourage them to be actively using their shareholder powers to ensure that, you know, to promote compliance really. So I'm comfortable with that wording.
Did you want another question, Vince?
Oh, I just agreed with Chris.
So let's get the recommendation on the table. I need a mover and a seconder.
I've moved.
Yep, I know that. We've got a seconder? Yep. So now we have a recommendation on the table. You're all aware of that with that inclusion, and I'm happy to debate that recommendation. Some of you might want to speak in favour of it or some to the contrary, and I'm happy to receive that now before I put it to the vote. Hold that silence as understanding, thank you. And the wording with the inclusion, so I'm going to put that recommendation as written with that inclusion. So all in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? No abstentions? That motion is carried. Thanks very much. Claire, can I just say I want to thank you for your diligence and walking us through this. I know it's a huge amount of work. I often see you and Jason beavering away in the little office opposite me, and you know, it might only be, you know, 7 or 8 pages, but there's about, I don't know how many hours before you get that paper to present to us, and I totally respect the diligent manner that you respond to our questions for clarification, so thank you. Yeah, I understand that, but you know, someone's got to hold the blooming pen. Yeah, that's great, thank you. Councillors, we're ticking along okay, but we get to have Claire back at the table, or remain at the table. And we have the director appointment and remuneration policy. So this is really just, we already have a policy because we already have a couple of CCOs, and this is really just inserting some policy direction for there's some wording to reflect, you know, pending change. So perhaps Claire, if you just take us through this, if you've got questions that you've organised in your minds, councillor will receive those, and then we'll look at the recommendation. So thank you, Claire.
Madam Mayor has indicated we already have a policy that requires by statute. We're just seeking to tweak it a little bit to enable us to appoint the directors hopefully next month to the Water Services Council controlled organisation. So we've added another section. Note that the directors for the council controlled organisation have to be appointed based on skills and with legislation, and the process for appointing them is set out there. 3 will be jointly appointed, as we've indicated before, with 1 each appointed by the Kaikoura and Kurunui district councils. And the chair is recommended by the board to the shareholders. Any questions?
Thanks, Claire. I think it's pretty well spelled out in the policy wording, but does it sit comfortably in your minds, councillors, to look at adopting this policy, or do you have some questions around the proposed wording? Pretty happy? Are you happy to do something about it for me?
I wouldn't like to jump in because other people might have some questions, but yeah, if that's the case, then you say.
I won't disappoint you. I'll leave Brett go, please.
Through the chair, I've just got a quick question, and it might just be my confusion that's making me ask this. Just page 47 in the remuneration for CCTO, and the third little paragraph there. However, in the event of council staff being appointed to the CCO board fees, I didn't think, am I confused? I didn't think council staff were eligible to be on there. So am I confused with that, or have I just misunderstood?
So this is,
Through you, Madam Mayor.
this is not, we're talking about Wisco here. are we?
The
Okay.
WISCO is defined in legislation as
Yeah.
being a council controlled organisation, but not a council controlled trading organisation.
So staff and councillors cannot be directors of the WISCO, but they can be directors of a CCO or CCCO.
So how, so then, oh, okay, so then it's, where are we? This talks about the conflict, right? Sorry, yeah, so it's my misunderstanding. Thanks for that.
So can you identify, like we've got, can you just identify, give an example around that? So we've got the,
ENC is
Yeah.
a good example,
Yeah.
so Enterprise North Canterbury, well, the North Canterbury Business Development Trust Trading is Enterprise North Canterbury. So the mayors of the two councils are automatically trustees of that organisation, so by default directors of the company. And the chief executives of both organisations, as part of the constitution, associate directors. We don't, we're associate trustees, so we don't have voting rights, but we're there for the conversation. So that's an example, whereas in a WISCO, it's an absolute prohibition by under the Act that we cannot be directors, either elected members or staff.
and Brett, it's a good question you raised, just to clarify, because I had an asterisk beside that as well, because I think it's about clarity of thought about this policy is giving direction to existing organisations, but actually a new organisation, and that's why it's separated out, and that's how I sort of framed it in my mind. But I like that question because I think it provided some clarity to that. Chris, you had a question?
No, that was actually the same question, so I stepped back.
Okay, look, councillors, is there any other questions in regard to the policy or the manner it's written? Sorry, did you have your hand up? Yeah?
I have a general question.
Hang on,
Madam
we'll just go to Vince. Thank you.
I don't know, it might be, just the advertising, seeing we've got another organisation that's quite important. I think like the Kaikoura Haranui, we should publicly advertise. In our policy, it should be publicly advertised. You know, when the directors roll over and that,
Yeah.
so separate to the other any other, because it's just about the only.
So is that something that should be in the policy, or is that something that?
At the moment, it just says the council has decided at the time, but I think important positions like that, to get the best people, I think we should be advertising every time.
I guess the question is, should that be in the policy? I mean, I agree with you, and I think that's the intention for us, or with the appointment from Haranui District Council will be publicly advertised locally. I think that's my intention. Can you confirm that?
Yep.
Yeah, but I guess my question is.
Has Kaikoura got a policy at the moment? Because I don't think they have.
I can't answer that. Have we got a policy? I don't know.
No, their paper tomorrow will be slightly different from ours because they don't have an existing policy.
Yeah, because they said they'd just go and look at our policy and more or less cut and paste.
Yeah. So I think the point that you're raising is a valid point, that when we appoint, so the 3 directors that are initially going to be appointed is joint, and then there is provision for Haranui District and Kaikoura District to appoint independently. I think it's important for us all to understand that the intention for that single appointment will be locally advertised, you know, North Canterbury News or whatever, to get the skill mix. I guess, you know, that's the process. But I guess my question to you is, should that be in the policy? Happy to take some guidance.
Just raising it, so.
Yeah, I think your intention is, your question is correct, but the question is, should it be in a policy?
So I think the policy could include that that positions are publicly advertised. I don't see any problem with that. I don't think you want to get into the specifics of how they're advertised.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
And that's what we've done for
We
the.
don't want it to become an old boys club.
That's what we've done for the directors. We have advertised publicly in those roles.
Yeah. So can you just give me direction, what page you're on, so I know where to add it?
What page are you on, Vince?
46. Appointment process.
46.
Council will decide in open council whether to advertise a particular vacancy or not. or just appoint without advertisement?
So just to be clear, I mean, there's a couple of directorships that we have. So Jason's the director of Prairie Holdings because it's an inactive company and somebody has to handle the paperwork. So Jason's the director for that. Do you want to go out and advertise for that position? And Mari is a director of, or trustee of the North Canterbury Development Trust by dint of the constitution. So there's no point in advertising that position. It's simply.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that in that policy, should state our water company as a separate sort of way we do it.
Okay, flavour of the room. I'm going to Pauline, Chris, and then Chris. Pauline.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the unintended consequences of putting it in the policy for those sorts of directorships that Hamish has just talked about. And it is, so Vince, can I just clarify, you're suggesting that we state in the policy that for a WISCO, it is publicly advertised? So we're specifically just talking about the WISCO.
So it would need to be in red, if you know what I mean. If you look at what we've got here.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Silent. So have we just thinking from your perspective, do you want to just sit on that one and I'll come back to you, Pauline?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. The question I will be is, would it be prudent to put into the WISCO's constitution that the public to address this issue there? And that way it wouldn't reflect into us directly. It would be outside of our umbrella. And the question adding to that, of course, is will both councils be operating under the same terms for employment, which we are presently looking at? And will that cross over? Sorry, it's a double barrel question, but one, if they work as one, then we can perhaps suggest to the draft that placing these statutes into the constitution for the WISCO would be more prudent than reflecting them in council, therefore they don't taint the issues that's Hamish the CEO has drafted.
Madam Mayor, if I could just respond to that. So the constitution is the constitution of the WISCO. This is about direct appointment by the council to the WISCO. So I think that that it would be very simple to add another line into this document under advertising, saying that WISCO positions will always be advertised, publicly advertised. Very simple. Clear, I don't know whether you've got me on that, but I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah, and I wondered whether it should be on page 49 under the introduction.
No, because we're talking about advertising, we're specifically talking about advertising.
Okay, look, I'm comfortable, kind of makes it brief, so that, you know,
I'd be
we can add
happy
that in and read that, you know, that's a new direction for the, under the WISCO, which doesn't taint, if you like, the already existing policy direction of ENC or the permanent holdings, so that, I think we've got the flavour.
Or could go under section 4, no, there's
So that's what I thought about.
no, section 4 is excluding WISCOs.
No, on page 49. Permanent for water services organisation, the introduction.
That's also got number 4 beside it.
Yeah, but it could be appointment of local directors,
Numbering issue.
be locally advertised, or,
Yep.
you know, it could be under, that's where I was looking, under.
Oh, fine,
On page-
okay.
Find an appropriate posse. We'll find an appropriate posse, stick it in red, and it will become the policy direction. I think that covers off your question, we're done.
Thank you, Madam
Chris,
Mayor.
done?
Thank you.
Well, my comment on that was that under advertising, so the council decided no open meeting whether to advertise. And I sort of, you know, this needs written in there from the point of view that we're going to discuss an appointment. And as you say, it's an appointment to a company that's non-operational, whatever the moment, it doesn't matter, but as you say, if it's to WISCO, or
Yeah.
it's just discussed at that council meeting, it would be prudent to advertise it.
Yeah, look, I think everybody's, you know, what we're trying to achieve is a you know, fair and open result, and I think your comments is equally valid as what it is inserting it, but I think for confidence of the policy direction, because, our staff will use this as their directive. And by putting it in, it's not going to lose any emphasis. So I'm pretty comfortable that we found a posse, or Claire will find a posse that will become in red, that local appointments of local directors will be advertised locally, or whatever.
No, appointments of directors will be advertised.
Right,
will be
okay.
advertised.
I was getting there.
And it publicly advertised, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sure Graham's got that information in. And is there any further questions to clarify the recommendations with those minor amendments? Should I hand up for a question, or should I hand up to look for direction?
Page 40 on the summary and the third bullet point, just to preempt, probably going 3 minutes next time. Well, I completely understand what that says. I think maybe it should say that the Hurunui and Kaikoura District Councils are currently recruiting directors. But really, I'm really just looking for an assurance. Going through the dates, from this point on, we're going to have a board that needs to be set up by the end of February. It needs to be staggered 1, 2, 3 years, I understand it, so that will be process to try and work that. That board's then going to give us feedback on the expectations by 31st of March, and then they're going to give us a draft annual plan on the 30th of April. So there's a real scrunch up of time period there, and I was just probably looking for an assurance that where we are now is fitting in with that.
Claire, you can advise us.
You are quite right that it's going to be pretty scrunchy. Don't worry, Graham's chances of spelling that. But in terms of, is it tight? The answer is yes. It is very likely that the councils will support the board with the development of the first annual plan, because it would be very difficult for them to do it on their own first time up. But ultimately, it will be their annual plan, not our annual plan. It could be that we don't end up appointing directors by the end of the month, whatever reason. It's possible for things to slip. One of the ones where the timing is particularly critical, and it's quite likely we won't know when it's going to happen, is the appointment. And the general manager wants to say a whole lot of things, and they may not ever say on the first annual plan when they're appointed. We will do our best.
Just ask clarification. How do you work, or do you advertise for a 1-year director, a 2-year director, a 3-year director? How do we start this staggered thing?
So we've already advertised for directors, Robbie. We've got 66 applications at last count, and some very good quality ones in there, I must say. So generally the board will figure it out amongst themselves and say this is their preference for, elect this one for 1 term, after 1 year, or appoint one for 1 year, 2 years, etc. So boards normally pretty good at stuff. If they're not, you can tell them, because that's your right in appointing the directors to stipulate that.
Thanks very much. Look, I think we've had a good conversation around the policy and the inclusion of the clauses in that policy. I'm happy to move that we adopt the policy inclusive of the director appointment. I'm happy to move that for the chair. Do I have a second before that? Thank you, Pauline. All in agreement to adopt, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks very much, guys. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much.
Yes, yeah. So we have our next decision item, which is in regard to some funding and operations for the Cheviot Medical Centre. Hamish is going to speak to this in Dan's absence, but this has been backwards and forwards to the Cheviot community, and I'm sure Vince, you'll be all over this. But perhaps if we can deal to this, Hamish, and then we will break for lunch. And we'll be good. Thank you. Thanks, Hamish.
Thanks. Madam Mayor. So, as I said in favour, the Cheviot Community Committee have been working with the Cheviot Medical Centre and Trust regarding some alterations to the building there, and the Cheviot Community Committee at its meeting 4th of December resolved to seek approval to continue with the existing targeted rate to cover the cost of the alterations. So that's the crux of this. It's not about the alterations, it's about how they're funded and how they're rated. So what they're asking is that the current $60 rate continues to financial year 34-35 to cover the estimated $253,000 cost of making the alterations. The quotes are all in, it's been a QS done, and it all looks pretty good as far as that goes. So really all we're asking you to consider here is the rate. Are you happy for that rate to continue for that period? That's the crux of the question that you're looking at here.
Vince, do you want to have add anything to
At
that?
a community meeting, when we did the budgets, we all agreed to carry on a rate. It was $60. It was even if we weren't doing this, we were going to build up a fund so that we knew that one day we'll need a new medical centre or do this job. So that's, we asked for the continuation because we knew that eventually we'd have to do work like this. So I would move the recommendation.
So you're happy to move the recommendation as written on page 51. Okay, I'll hold on to that. You want to second that? It's a story. Yeah. Have you got a question?
Yes, I do.
We've got a mover and seconder, so I'll take that question and then we'll get that recommendation on the table. Thank you.
I do have a question, and I'm generally in support of the recommendation though. So with that $60 targeted rate, does that through to the 34-35 year, does that cover the full $253,000 or is,
Yeah, it does.
that's how it's calculated to actually pay it within that time and ensure that there are continued services up?
Yeah, the current long-term plan, Vince is correct that the community decided to keep the $60 in the long-term plan for the full long-term period of the long-term plan, but the current debt relating to the medical centre was due to be paid off in the 26-27 year, and then that $60 per rate would build up a fund to do additional in the future. That wasn't specifically planned in the long-term plan, but yeah, envisaged that there would be work to be done. If there's no other work that needs to be done over the next 7 years, the $253,000 will be repaid in the 34-35 year, and that's just by projections out that period. But we do not so much this annual plan, but next year we'll be doing a long-term plan, and we'll be able to recalibrate the debt levels for the medical centre. That's
great. Thanks for that commentary. Absolutely happy to support.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. I'm going to put that motion. I think if there's no further questions, all in agreement to that resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that motion is carried. Thank you. And just as a final commentary around this, I think we're really fortunate to have 4 medical centres that are supported so well by volunteers to run the boards, to activate and to provide health provision, across our community. So, I just want to acknowledge and be grateful for that time. And this is a good example of that. Thank you. So, with that, councillors, we're being on lunchtime. How good is that?
Jeez.
So we will break for lunch. When we come back, we have no discussion items in front of us, but we have our information items, and we will start with the 7.1, the Health Authority annual return. But we will adjourn now for lunch, and we will resume back here at 1 p.m. And so enjoy. Thank you. you. Rightio, welcome back, councillors. And we are now looking at our information items, of which we have 4 before we go to the excluded. So we've got our Alcohol Authority annual return. Quite a mouthful, really. Yeah. And in Dan's absence, I'm just going to speak with that, so maybe with a little bit of support from you, giving you oversight. So it's just an annual return of what we do and how we do it here in the Hurunui, but anything else, Dan?
No, the annual return is a statutory document, the annual return is there for your information.
Yeah, that's cool. So happy to receive questions. We might refer to Pauline if there's any questions in regard to this, but as we said, it's all been spelled out. It talks about the applications, and so happy to receive any questions, councillors. Thank you, Brett.
Through the chair, if I could just add, do we have any policy or rules in relation to maximum discounting, which I know that some authorities do? Maximum discounting level that outlets can do.
Through the chair, no, we don't have anything within our local alcohol policy.
Not that I'm aware of.
No, not that I'm aware of, but I think that there have been, within individual decisions, occasionally there have been a little tweak, but nothing that would take in the entire district. But certainly alcohol pricing and discount is something that the agencies or the public in opposition might comment on in regards to a new licence or a renewal, and then that might be considered by the committee.
I haven't seen this issue. I've just got one other quick question if I could. When a business closes down, the licence lapses. Is that correct?
So when a business closes down, the base license stays in place. And so if there is a new purchaser who comes in, they then have the opportunity to apply for a temporary authority, which means that the base, if it's granted, that the base, and it's reported on by the licensing inspector and the Ministry of Health and the police. And then it does go to the district licensing committee, usually on papers, and if it's granted, usually for a 3-month period, it's granted on the basis of that base license. And it would be fair to say that the Hurunui DLC encourages a very prompt application for the own license, and is not keen on a second or a third TA, but sometimes there are administrative things that require that.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for that. Thanks, Dave. You have a question?
Yeah. Just getting an understanding, because I know in Hannah Springs there was issues with duty managers and immigration, and just looking through here, I was surprised that only one licence has been down or whatever. Is there an active, are we working with immigration so there's no migrant abuse, or?
I mean, I'm happy to receive comments
That's a
around,
problem,
but I
isn't
think
it?
that was an immigration issue, and what we're talking about here is applying the principles of the Sounds Private Alcohol Act. So I think we're just we're talking.
Questions,
Yeah, I think we're talking about 2 different criteria. Yeah. Do you agree with
Yeah,
that?
2 different legislations. Yeah. And so whilst immigration information could be raised potentially at a hearing, the committee would need to be very, very careful about how they approach that information or included it. Because our primary legislation is the Sale and Supply of Alcohol. I guess it could go to suitability, couldn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so could go to suitability of a licensee or suitability of a manager to hold a manager's certificate, potentially.
I suppose supplementary to that through the chair is just asking, do we check that they've got the relevant visas for, as a part of the process now?
And do you mean in regards to the licensee or in regards to a
Manager's
manager?
Manager's licenses.
Through the chair, that sort of information is covered very, very fully in the report that's done by the licensing inspector.
And I guess too, the police might report on that as well, or Ministry of Health, to be fair, you know, so, I mean, there are, you know, 3 tri-agencies that would likely, on a new application particularly, would likely to give advisory in their reporting in support or not to an individual application who is seeking a licence to be a manager, because it's interesting when you, and you can expect this as well, Pauline, but a manager's licence is like a driver's licence in many ways. Once you receive it, you've got the ability to actually work in a off licence or an on licence or one food festival, or, you know, so it's important that actually the suitability that Pauline talked about before is diligently worked through to ensure that the manager has.
So I suppose what I'm raising is police will not raise immigration criteria when someone's applying for it. I just hope through our system we're making sure that they've got the appropriate visas that we can.
I guess it would be managed on what we are given.
Maybe it's a manager.
Yeah. And, I mean, as Murray alluded to, police do raise it if they have a concern, and a licensing inspector will raise it as well. And so then it would be considered potentially under suitability, but it is a different legislation that interplays. In the same way that anyone seeking employment in New Zealand requires a certain level of immigration cover, visa, work permit.
Thanks, Pauline. Question?
Of course, under the Slavery Act, which was drafted recently internationally under the United Nations, which we're now having, I know in my own particular world, it's becoming part of what we have to address. Under the Slavery Act, is there any presently, or is there any intention going forward when we have immigrants applying to certain positions within the liquor industry? Are we making sure that they're covered, particularly after the recent times of what we've seen in the media around New Zealand, particularly in Canterbury? Is there any proviso there at this time, or is it forthcoming in the future?
Just what I would speak to that is that it would really come under the Employment Relations Act, in my opinion, but it's certainly not something that we've discussed at a district licensing level at this point in time that I can recall.
Yeah, no, and I think too that when an application is lodged, it can be granted on the papers if everything fits with the criteria for a manager's licence or an on-licence or whatever. If it sits outside of that, it will go to a hearing, and it is particularly now, it's within the bounds of the district licensing committee to cross-examine and cover off perhaps questions that maybe both of you are raising. So if there is nothing in the application that is outside of the Act, it might be granted on the paper by the chair. If there is something that is coming through that the DLC would like to cross-examine or question on, they would take it to a hearing when they could actually satisfy for themselves whether they will grant or oppose that application. So that's the process that it goes through. Yeah. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, inquisitive process, really.
Cool. Thank you. Robbie, a question?
A couple of observations. Obviously FEMS and that, it's not in there because they're a different legislation, but these numbers, it might be useful for us board or even for ourselves, compared to the previous year, just to see if there was a trajectory up or down, was a bit of an indication on the hospitality side of the district, I suppose. Just to have something to compare it to.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, it could be, it might be an indicator of economic prosperity or growth. But I guess the question then is raised, what can we do about it? What's within our powers to change that? You know, we can't make a change. We can only embrace new community investment through, and then it probably would be the DLC would actually, through that process, might determine whether they want to have, so I think in our policy we're a sinking lid policy still on, is that correct? Can you remember? On pokies or on our lap? Do we have a
Nothing
do we
in
have
the
a
lab.
consideration? No, we
There's
don't.
nothing in the lab
Okay,
about,
so it's open.
yeah, it's very hard to get anything into a lab. There are places in New Zealand that have it, but it's very hard to get in, what's the word, the number of premises within a certain
Radius. Yeah.
yeah. But it is something that is often raised by the trade agencies in new applications in particular. If I may, Madam Mayor, just also, this is the first time I believe that this information has come to council, and certainly Mari felt that it's actually information that is of interest to the council. So, yeah, if you did want a comparison on something, then I'm sure that the compliance team would be happy to help you out with that comparison, but via the right lead, the right chief.
Yeah, okay. So a couple of more questions and then
Very
we'll
small
move on.
question, thank you, Madam Chair, Mayor. The question I have is when an off licence expires, say by 18 months or 12 months, how does it play out? Do they have to reapply and go through due process, or can they just easily reapply and pop back up, even if it's, say, it happened in, I don't know, 2024, say, suddenly realising that they've missed their licence? Do they have to go through a due process again, or is it just a, let's go back and pay the bill and get going again?
It's a brand new licence.
If there is a lapse, it would be, not talking what Pauline described before,
No,
but if it's a brand new licence on it's been lapsed for 6 years, it would be a brand new application and they would be granted a probationary period for 12 months, and then they would reapply at a renewal at 12 months and they would get a 3 years, is that correct? Yeah, 3 years would be granted for their licence. Yep, so that's the process.
I just noticed in our list there's quite a few that have lapsed in the 2024 period. So just curious, I'm curious.
Yeah, there are a few businesses that chose to move on. Yeah. So that base licence that I spoke about, a base licence is, as Mari alluded to, is unless it's in that probationary period or unless it's a condition of the licence put in place by the DLC, is normally 3 years. And so if a business closes and sells within that 3 years, that's when the base licence still applies.
Right, questions, guys, and it's good to have this return in front of us, so it gives us a kind of a full suite of knowledge for councillors in the particular district. So if there is no further questions, I'm happy to look at the recommendation and receive that information. Is someone wanting to move? Thank you, Tom. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Brett. If there is no opponents around that, I'll put that motion. All in agreement, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thanks very much. Rightio, Jason. We've got in front of us our financial report, and looks like you've been working away to get a report in front of us with lots of numbers. So appreciate that. And probably we'll just go through it as you normally do, and a bit of a page turn and receive questions as we go. That's probably the easiest way. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to point out I haven't been working hard on this afternoon. So I've been enjoying an extended leave break and about to go on more leave. So these financial reports aren't quite perfect, but they are certainly a step up of what we've had over the last few months. So there is a greater level of confidence in being able to question the numbers a bit further, but there's still a little bit of work to be done. But this is a significant step away from
Jason, can I just, before you go on, probably councillors, you might have in your pack page 69, which is the Lagoima. So that paper obviously is just a little bit out of context, and it is further on in your paper. So this does not form part of the financial report, and it was just a wee bit of slippage as the agenda was put together. So just out of curiously looking and saying, how does this fit in? It doesn't. Okay, so thanks, Jason. We'll let you carry on now.
Right. So at this stage, I've just got the two components, the financial report itself and the treasury. I will reinstate the weighted regional report and just difficult to get a, because of the lead period, bang on the 31st of December, getting a trial balance relating to rates to be able to match it up against where we were this time last year was just difficult. We'll be fine. The 31st of January and be able to get the direct currency we had been in previous years. So the financial report there, starting from page 71. So front page, and again, what I'm keen to do is focus on the year to date. There is a bit of narrative of what's happened in December. We can refer to that if there's any questions about it, but I will sort of just concentrate on year to date because, again, we'll be looking at year to date figures. So what's happened during the month is probably a reflection of the difference between the year to date now and the year to date from the previous month. So there's a few timing variances that would have occurred in previous months that have been sort of set up now. But yeah, the front page is council overall. Total operating revenue set at 38 million, and budget for the first half of the year is 34 million. So we're about 3.5 million up, and that's principally in recognition of vested assets and also grants and subsidies, which does include NCTA subsidies. The overall expenditure is about 600,000 above what we had predicted for the 6 months. And again, there's a combination of various components there that we can drill down to further through the document. And then the capital expenditure at the end of December, we're sitting on 14 million spent. Our budget for the first 6 months of the year was 25 million, so we are significantly behind there. But again, there will be some a bit more detail in the individual activity reports. So page 72 is water supplies. From an income point of view, we're pretty much on budget. Slightly lower level of rates received during the year, and I think that is due to the budgeted level of water usage was higher than what we ended up rating for in July. There's two components of rating for water. One's connection fees, the other one is water usage in the urban areas. So and that does fluctuate depending on people's usage of water. If it's a wet summer, they don't use as much water. So it's very hard to predict that sort of a year out. So at the moment we're about 32,000 short on our rates budget, but with some other components, so we've got higher revenue. And then expenditure altogether, we're about 193,000 up on budget, and there's a bit of narrative there. Direct expenditures up, which does include an increase in electricity, but that's been offset by some of the other direct expenditure being lower than budget.
Sorry, Jason, we've got a question.
I just trying to work out the electricity one.
Yep.
Because you've got over a notes date to year on 7 that expenses are currently over budget by 323.
Yes.
Then on the first breakdown on number 5 or 5 says it's 230k.
Yeah, it's because in December.
Yeah, I read that, yeah. So is the figure the 323 the whole year going? So we're going to be quite a bit on. Is there a breakdown, Jason, why our power bill's gone up so much?
Yep. Yeah, there is. We were up last year. It hasn't. We haven't adequately budgeted for the increase in the price. Because electricity has gone up every week. But also, some of the components of, we've got higher level of usage as well, because we've got new kit that's been provided for, and we had discussed this last year and hadn't adequately allowed for the budget moving forward. So there does need to be a bit of work on making sure that we've got the understand the usage properly, and then apply that to the increasing charges that we do get for water, for electricity. It's one of those price components that we actually have not a huge amount of control over.
Because what worries me, Jason, is I get talk about, like even on the Cheviot number 1, of closing down the reservoir at Clintox, which is high up. And the way the system works at the moment, it pumps from a reservoir at the wellhead up to that reservoir, and then it's gravity fed quite a way right into Cheviot. But if we start pumping from the ground, right from Spotswood to Cheviot, our power bill is going to be enormous, because we're going to be shifting that water, 4 or 5 kilometres. Some of it's uphill. Just the basic maths, pushing that water that far, when there is a system where there's a reservoir where we've only got one push up to it, and then it's gravity fed right to Cheviot. And so it just worries me a wee bit, as government sitting here thinking, I hear this talk, but is the costs to the consumer and the power and everything being looked at? I just think you've got a good system which is cheap as far as the electricity part. It defies logic to me. I'm sorry. So.
Sorry, I can't comment.
I know,
Yeah.
but it's a question that I think the management need to ask.
Yes, and may also be a good question, coming to an operations committee, where actually we were talking about the function. What we're talking about here is the financial impact, which is good to consider, but actually, what's the rationale through operations to consider pumping it to that one reservoir and let it will provide, that we need to understand what the form and function is of that, which is triggering the cost, which is in this report. That's kind of what I'm hearing, thinking. Does that make sense? Yeah? Makes it, yeah, so hold on to that thought and maybe ask those sort of questions at the operations meeting, because that's when you'll get the operational context of why that's happening, as opposed to, pumping it in a not too good on 65 mil or whatever it is, pumping that much water through 6 kilometres or whatever, because what we're hearing here, what we're seeing here is the outcome, the financial outcome.
Through the chair, wouldn't it be a lot more sensible, because I'm not an engineer or water hydrologist, so Vince sends actually a question so that the technical people can give the reasons. I'm sure there must be a reason to pump versus whatever. So you need to ask the question for the question to come back to.
I just raise it because the power bill here. That's what brought it up.
I think my suggestion would be to offer that to an operations committee, because I think that's the donkey work. This is the financial impact. Yeah. So hold on to that and bring it again. Thank you. Okay, move on.
Yeah, certainly is an issue to keep abreast of the electricity costs, and if we have rates capping, can we cap the cost of electricity and things like that, the inputs into what we need to do. But,
that's right.
Just an item there, you can see a negative number relating to employment costs, and Cheryl's, who's done the financials, and just made a note, and it's all the way through there, that there is just a review that we need to do of the wages to make sure that the cost that has been timesheeted is getting costed correctly too. So it's just it's more of a point that that's still a process that we're reviewing to make sure that it is occurring the way we we intended it to, and the way we use it through our own system. Okay, page 73, sewerage. And generally, we're the income, we're about 200,000 above budget. The bulk of that sits in invested assets. Now we got two key subdivisions that had completed subdivision, got the 224 certificate, and vested a range of assets to us. And so we've already accounted for those. Normally we do it at the end of the year, but the information was available, and it is, yeah, we are already, the amount of vested assets already exceeds what we had in the budget. Whereas last year, you recall, if reviewed the annual report, we had no vested assets whatsoever, so we didn't have any completed subdivisions that provided new infrastructure for the council to take ownership of. But already we've had a significant amount. 6 months. Expenditure wise, we are under budget, and capital expenditure, we're also under budget. Page 74 is stormwater. And again, the key variance there sits in that vested asset area. On the budget, and that accounts for the most significant part of capital expenditure today.
My apologies, I didn't quite catch that. I do apologise. Could you repeat yourself on that again for me, please? I didn't quite. Could you repeat yourself again for me, please? I didn't quite hear that.
So the biggest component of, or the biggest variance on page 74 is the fact that we have recognised about $1.5 million worth of vested assets.
Yep.
And that appears right down on the bottom as part of the capital expenditure as well. So there's money in, money out, essentially.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roads and footpaths on page 75. Now, again, two key areas of revenue there, one being subsidies, where we have the level of subsidies we've received to date is about just over $1 million higher than what we had budgeted for. And the other key variance there is, again, the vested assets relating to those two key subdivisions. And again, $2 million worth of vested assets for roading is significantly up on our budget for the year, 1.1. And expenditure lines are there. Yeah, a lot of that we're above budget for operating, but below budget for capital, and that does relate to just timing of those the works, particularly in the capital area or the renewal area. A lot of that construction is this time of year, rather than for the first half of the financial year. Page 76 is climate adaptation. So this essentially incorporates 3 particular areas: the Foreshore Protection Fund for Amberley Beach, the Amberley Beach Proactive Relocation Account, and also we've got Montanale Beach, just some development of the sections in Montanale Beach, and then the on-selling of those. Now you'll see that we are under capital expenditure. There's an item there. We've got a budget of 899,000. That is carrying forward the money that we had budgeted for in the previous year to do the subdivision work in Montanale Beach, and that hadn't progressed, so it needed to be carried forward into this financial year. The revenue item there of 360,000 was scheduled to be the sale of some of those sections, which again will be delayed as a result.
Oh, look, I just want to check that around, was the round of public excluded on that?
I'm showing the effects of what we have in our budget, which we can't hide. It's part of it. And it was allowed for in the last, certainly allowed for in the long-term plan. That was to do the development work and then on sell the resulting sections. This just represents the fact that we haven't moved as quickly on that project. So there's a bit of an effect on the revenue line as well.
Yeah, I just sort of thought of
Yeah.
all of that might raise questions.
Thank you, thanks, Jason.
Right, page 77 is public services, and this incorporates significant amount of other things. So from a financial point of view, revenue we're up by about 960,000. And Cheryl's provided quite a detailed breakdown of the variances there, particularly transfer station fees being significantly higher than what our budget was. We've got some forestry royalties that we've received, and that was primarily from the milling of Balmoral, the Balmoral Reserve, which was required to do for safety reasons. And a few other variances there. Certainly grants, we are up on budget as well. We've received various grants that have been listed there through Together Huranui. Waiau Pole had transferred some money into their council account. We've had the Mayor's Task Force and youth, all projects that we hadn't specifically allowed for in the budget.
Thanks, Dave.
I'm not sure, Sue, to chair whether it's appropriate if we've got forestry royalties at $69,000 from the Balmoral Reserve. We've decimated their income over this previous summer. There's no way of not appropriate to give any of that money to them. It's a capital for forest.
I think that will be a discussion for the Murray Community Committee. I think, I mean, they wouldn't receive the funds from the sale of the trees. It was just the fact that those trees needed to be taken out. Yeah. But yeah, they may put their hand up for a portion of that. So that will be a discussion with the community committee. Right.
Thank you, Tom. I'll go through NC. I'll go Tom, Pauline, and then Robbie. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, just a very quick one, Jason. You mentioned under item 6 on that page 77, there's 33,000 been spent on the soldiers block.
Yeah.
Yep. In the middle of that long paragraph.
Oh, sorry.
Over there on the left-hand side.
Yep.
I thought the soldiers block was now the responsibility of the trust.
A lease hasn't been signed yet.
No.
A lease hasn't been signed yet. A lease isn't in place yet.
So we are responsible still until such times as the lease is signed, including buying furniture.
For the building.
Yep.
Do we have a date for when the lease might be signed?
Well,
We're
It's a
getting very, we're
negotiation.
getting very close.
I'll skip out of it because I'm compromised over that discussion. The negotiation of the lease has been tasked by a trustee who is not part of council to remove that potential or perceived conflict of interest. So I'll sit back from this discussion.
Yeah, we're getting very close to signing a lease. We don't have too many points of disagreement, but it's been quite a complex process given that it's multi-tenanted and how the different parts of that fit together.
Can I come back to the table? I'm gonna, Chris, I've got a few more questions before I come to you. I've got Pauline, Robbie, and then Chris. Thank you, Pauline.
Just looking for a bit of clarity. So on the right-hand column notes, number 5, the employment costs reporting under budget, completely understand that, but with review required on the new Datascape system, can you explain?
That's what I described before that.
It was
Making sure that as people, as employees are putting their time on their timesheet, making sure that it's appropriately costed to the right
Thank you,
areas.
sorry.
Yeah.
And like I said, we just need to just delve into that to make sure that it is occurring the way that we expect it to happen.
Right,
That's-
yeah, sorry, I thought that was what you meant, but I just, yeah.
So, and I'll just note that this isn't a problem specifically with Datascape, we used to do the same with Magic and exactly.
Yeah,
the same
right,
thing,
yeah,
make
yeah,
sure the
understood.
code was right.
Yeah, it's just about coding.
Wrong, so-
Yeah. No, that's cool. I just wanted to double check that I was reading it right and I'd perceived what you fed right. Thank you.
Robbie, hand up or not?
Oh,
And then I'll go to you, Chris.
just confirmation that talking about council assets and things, I understand that there is a policy around that, that had been going into the bottom, what work's done to see what was donated, how it came to be, we got hold of, had that asset or what we don't, whether it be a hall of trees or shed, anything. And I don't know that it was sparked from that, whatever, but from lots of Ashworth Beach forestry and that, so there is a process in place for that sort of thing.
Yep, that will certainly follow that. Generally, the trees are owned by council, so they sit with council, and it's up to council to determine how that, if it wishes to allocate any of the royalties based on specific records.
And final question, maybe to Chris.
Thank you. And through the chair, I have questions to the CEO. When it comes down to the negotiations of the lease to the building in due course, is that public knowledge at the moment, or is it still quite?
That's still in confidence and that it's subject to negotiation, of course.
So, thank you.
Okay, page 78 is regulatory services. So
Just before, I mean, it's just a comment more than a question, but it's just interesting to know the storm damage in our cemeteries and the cost that was incurred, $22,000. You know, it's a lot of money. Obviously, you know, we need to do these things to protect significant sites of interest and, you know, in a respectful manner, but it actually is, you know, it's a cost.
Do we have a sexton that looks, sorry, do we have a person who maintains it and the religious name is called a sexton or sexton? I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. Do we have someone who does it?
Sexton was the grave digger.
It's the grave digger, is it?
Yeah,
I got it
but we
wrong.
do have, I mean, now we've got a
Our
contract.
amenities team.
They look after
They
them.
look after the contract to the mine.
Yeah.
That'll help.
certainly, you know, these sort of costs, we do need to get the contractors and the trees and their staff, and we don't necessarily have so much of a budget for that. When that occurs, it is a hit in one go. Apart from Hammer Springs, who do actually set aside part of their amenities rate into a weather contingency fund for that very reason, when there is a bit of weather that does cause significant amount of damage. Yeah, and they can call on that fund to at least fund some of that cost.
I mean, Tom and I visited the Hammer Springs Cemetery a day or two after that wind event, and you know, the team had done a remarkable job because it was significant, the windfall and the damage to graves, and you know, but they had got in there and actually cleaned that site up in a short period of time. I can't remember the day or two, but you know, so it was remarkable. But it does come at a cost, you know, and that's that 22 grand. But anyway, I think it's been a useful discussion, but we'll carry on. Thank you.
Continuing on from what you're saying, I know that back in the day there was a similar thing around road, as I understand it, and then it was stopped because it was just honestly. But you wonder with the way the weather events and things are going, whether there's a discussion to be had about a district-wide thing like that, because we must know over the last 10 years what the average spending's been or something, because it's obviously going to happen more and more.
I guess you've got to balance it through.
Yeah.
Against the question, is the money better off in the ratepayers' pocket
Mm.
for them to be able to use? And then we only call for it when we actually need it, and we debt fund and do that, because that's the decision we took.
Mm.
That actually we're better not to take money out of the ratepayers' pocket and have it sitting in the bank, just in case.
Mm.
Ratepayers have better use for that money than what we do.
But,
And we can revisit that.
Yeah.
That was the rationale at the time.
100%. I don't think it's justified at that point, but I think what I was raising is that the frequency, and the intensity is certainly.
Well, it's almost coming into a maintenance thing. But, you know, an extreme event, you know.
Yeah, I suppose as the rates capping legislation as it currently sits, that you don't take it, but when it does happen, you've got a reason to increase the rates to allow for that. But
That capping scenario also says you've got to identify how you're going to get back inside that 2% cap. So, you know, yes, you can ask for a variation, but you've got to identify when you're going to get back inside the square. You know, so there's a lot of variations. We don't know when this significant draw is going to be on our finances to manage these things, you know, so yeah, bit to consider. Alrighty.
okay, page 58 is regulatory, and key variances sit there in revenue and employment costs, but also a little bit on direct expenditure. Revenue, we're just down on budget for consent fees and the alcohol licensing fees to date. Variance will come back for the remainder of this financial year. Employment costs just down on budget, and again, part of that is just making sure we've got the allocation done correctly. And direct expenditures up on budget by 40,000. There is some additional charges or costs that have been applied to the RMA consultancy costs, but some of that is in anticipation of on charging it to the applicants.
Yeah, so that does it get money out, money in on that scenario.
It's purely around timing, and it's recorded as an expense, but it'll come back through the record. Page 79 is the thermal pools, and line item there for the year. The pool to the end of December recorded a cash surplus of just over $1 million, but it is still a couple $100,000 down on what we had anticipated for the first half of the year. And that perhaps reflects, pretty ordinary couple of months. I think August and November were pretty ordinary from a revenue point of view from the pools. And capital expenditure, we're down on budget, but we have on the budget for the remainder of the year, so that will need to be reforecast as part of this process, budgeting the planning process.
Thanks, Pauline.
Look, it might be a question, sorry, through the chair, might be a question for Sarah maybe at the next meeting, but any comment, Jason, on the disparity between the year-to-date actual and the year-to-date budget for the operational expenditure?
Yeah, I mean, what's included in the operational expense, a little bit of employment costs, which we're down on budget. That's just, again, that's a little bit of the allocation of council staff, not the whole staff. The internal interest is lower than budget, largely because of the timing of the capital expenditure for the pools. They haven't gone into debt as heavily as we had predicted in in the annual plan. So the interest cost is lower, and the depreciation on the assets at the pools are just lower again. That's a reflection of the fact that we haven't completed some of the capital work.
So sorry, I probably didn't articulate that too very well. Thinking forward, oh, that's probably a question for Sarah, so I'll wait until the next meeting. Yeah, I'll put it next time, yeah, because I mean, you've just reiterated what's already in the notes, and I've read that, yeah. I guess I was looking for some more insight, but yeah, and I didn't articulate that. That's okay, I'll park it and answer Sarah my question.
Oh, thank you, we'll move on.
Okay, governance and corporate on page 80, right down there. Other incomes up on budget. We've got unbudgeted revenue as far as external interest. So when we've got spare cash, I'll put that in a call account and get a little bit of revenue from it. But rate penalties are up on budget, and we've got some other levels of revenue there that haven't been budgeted for. Expenditure wise, we're slightly up on employment costs, and again, that is just allocating costs from here to the other components of the organisation. So you can see we've got lots of negative numbers, positive numbers, the overall is all lower than what we had. The direct expenditure is over budget by about $500,000. We've got a chunk of that is timing. We lots of annual software licensing fees. We had actually budgeted a 12th per month, but it's all been an annual license fee, suggests all paid in one go. So that's probably a timing variance. Other bits that just need to be reviewed, and again, it's just the timing of providing these reports for the agenda. Gave us only a few days last week when we was back on board to be able to analyse it properly. So there's a wee bit more work to do. Hence my comment that they're not perfect at the moment.
People satisfied with that, or thank you? Okay. Thank you.
Capital expenditure, we're just slightly up in budget, and again, there's a bit of timing issues with that. But the final page in suite of financial reports is page 81, earthquake recovery, and very little.
It's just a work in progress, isn't it, really? We bring down as best we can, but 2016.
Yes, yeah, indeed, and I think probably recall, I think it's 5 of this current long-term plan that will keep relating to the earthquake will finally be. So that's probably 10 to 12 years after the earthquake. So 10 years after 10 years after we struck and started. Page 82, 83, and 84 is the detailed breakdown of the capital expenditure into individual projects and comparing it to the budget and where we are for the full year today. So very summarised in the financial report. This is very detailed in the
Anybody got any questions in regard to those finer details on Appendix 1A? Because it's capital expenditure proposed. All right. We'll move on. Thank you.
Right, so the next part of the financial report is the treasury report. So just points to note, at the end of December, total debts at 93.5 million. Our annual plan has anticipated that our debt at the end of June would be 109.5 million, so we're still 16 million away. So the breakdown of the debt, 87. As at the end of December, $1 million drawn down from our Westpac facility, and that was just to ensure we had adequate quick cash flow over the Christmas break. 10 million of that is in short-term debt, and then 82.5 million is in the longer-term debt.
Thanks, Dave.
Through the chair, Jason, so how are we tracking to our debt in June when we take into account in the long-term plan we will demolish the Queen Mary, we will all the stuff in different places? If you take out those capital items, those big items, are we still on track with your
Yeah, we have done a very rough forecast for this financial year as part of the annual planning process. We will be certainly short of that 109 million in debt, but it will depend on further decisions that need to be made for the remainder of the financial year. But there will be, and that will be part of that capital expenditure report, a review of that by the budget holders to make sure that those projects will actually be completed by the end of the year. If they're not, we just need to reforecast what we will spend so we can get an accurate forecast on what the debt will be at the end of June. So, if we're 4 or 5 million short of our capital expenditure targets, that is 4 or 5 million less debt that we hold, and that has an effect on the interest costs moving forward, the interest costs that we budget to move forward.
So the budget holders of those CapEx identified will be reviewing that in the budget, and it will form part of the decision making, I guess, as we go into, this year. And
That's right,
beyond.
yeah.
So the budget holders that sit inside the office here
That's right.
need to look at and revise that or push it out. It's a bit like the sweating the assets in your comment earlier. Maybe comes in 4 years' time or whatnot. Yeah, so that's all being done in the office at the moment. Yeah, I think that's your question, Dave. Well, Chris.
Sorry. Through the chair, the question will be, what's our predicted payback or our payback time on some of this 90-day paper, and what's our vision on it? I notice we've got several that are loosening up in the next few months where we are going to be looking at, I'm picking around about 6 million. What's the policy we're looking at diminishing, or are we removing those 90-day papers off our board? Is it a possibility or not?
No, they will be there, but we need to refinance those components because the debt will still be there, and we won't. If we had cash to long-term cash was going to be available to pay back those debts, we would pay them at maturity, but more often than not, that debt level will still need to be the same. So we do refinance them when they do come to maturity.
Supplementary question on that through the chair. If that is the case, then am I assuming from what I'm reading and understanding by the documents in front of me, is that we're still carrying those $1 million, $3, $4, $5 million as a flat debt at 90-day paper at its maximum usage? Is that right?
Not at 90 days.
Well, some of them will be in different fluctuations and periods. I get it. Some of them are longer terms. I see that, but on paper, we know that. So that's the question. We are at this point carrying from it says here 93,500,000 in debt. And we're soon to put another 10 into there and push us over to the 109. I know there's depletion coming with the Waco and all that, but the question I'm asking is, all these debts are maxed out and they're inside our system. All that cash is inside our system. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
So and you know, as any of those tranches of debt mature, if we don't have cash to repay them, we do need to refinance them, and there is, you know, maturity requirements that we need to meet. You know, they will be generally you know, extended out to 2030 or 2032, whatever the our maturity profile from a debt point of view dictates. The $10 million, generally we do roll that over on a short-term debt. Generally roll that over on a 2-monthly or 3-monthly basis, because it is quite cheap debt in that respect. So we always have a level of short-term debt. Again, it is dictated by the maturity profile that we need to maintain, so we can't have all of our debt maturing in one spot, because you're at what we call credit liquidity risk at that point, because you could get lucky and the rates at that point are very, very low. Opposite could happen as well.
Your response, please, through the chair, your response leads me to a question that I didn't anticipate, so it's just come in my head, if you'll excuse me while I get it into play. So from what I'm understanding, we're rolling over the debt at its full paper value. Say it happens tomorrow, we go through the process of renewing that. There's no division there to buy down that debt as we renew?
Only if we do have available cash to do so, and that is sort of dictated by cash flow requirements moving forward. So generally we will just roll over that $10 million, knowing that we've got commitments until, particularly until rates, the bulk rates come in at the 20th of February. At that point, we do have cash, and if that's going to be available for a few months, given that it's sort of generally construction season, so a lot of our capital work's getting done, so that eats into that money pretty rapidly. But if we had $5 million spare on the 20th of February, we could reduce that $10 million down to $5 million for a period of time, and then renew it when we needed the cash. I'm not sure whether I've explained myself adequately well, or whether I've got myself confused.
I didn't mean to confuse you, I'm sorry about that. It just appears with me, as one who's accustomed to buying 90 paper and the likes and understand it, the buy down point is that I'm just curious about us continue debt carrying, because when you calculate and configure all the interest rates against each other, division it across the amounts and go for your median cost, it's quite high on dollar value that we're leaching, because that's what we're doing, we're leaching. So the question I was trying to understand is how, and because I'm thinking 8 months ahead in my brain, I'm thinking a year to 2 years out, how do we get ourselves in a position to buy down that debt as we go forward? Because things, as you know, we've got a rates cap, and that's why I was asked the question. I'm just trying to understand the lay of the land, that was all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, the way of getting rid of debt is increasing our revenue to try and reduce it.
But it's not. But in retaliation, so in response to that comment, I'd also point out that our ratepayers are not a never-ending pocket to keep touching, and my ratepayers have made it very clear. I'm lucky I've got an ear left after this weekend about that particular motion. So, but thank you for your input. It makes me understand a lot more. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, whether it's relevant now, but certainly as we move forward with the annual plan budget, on the first day of the annual plan of the new financial year, there will be approximately $80 million based on the forecast, $80 million of debt that doesn't disappear, but it does move to the water entity. So that's 80 million of this line for council. But it is $80 million still required to be serviced by our own community.
But we also lose asset on paper as well, because that transfers. So we're diminishing our asset backing as council, we're diminishing our position in cash flow in this way. And also that debt then goes over to an institution that is going to be, well, yet to be seen how it'll be driven. So that, you know, my concerns are about my ratepayers and myself getting bashed over the head for higher increased water costs because of this debt that will continue across. Everyone in the room and their constituents are going to have to deal with. So I'm just trying to understand the land in a fiscal policy way. That is all I'm trying to do, because it gives me a more clear understanding of what we're going to be dealing with in a year's time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Right,
There's no more questions on that.
I'll just finish liquidity at the end of, we need to have the liquidity ratio greater than 110% at the end of this is 1.6, so we're the total average cost of funds at the end of December was 3.92%, slightly raised from the same point at the end of November, and that's just reflecting the fact that the short-term interest rate. So the page 85 and 86 is the components of the Treasury dashboard, and just provides the key limits, and we are compliant with all the limits. Good. As I said, the bottom left hand of page 86 there shows the all out weighted average cost of funds, including margin, at 3.92%. That is an important component, because at the end of December, at the end of each quarter, we reset our internal interest rates. So that sets the basis that that component. So as the average cost of funds sits at 3.92%, our internal interest charge that we charge those activities or communities that hold debt will be 4.92%, and it'll be, and for the thermal poles, it's at 5.92%. So that's dropped 10 basis points from the same point at the end of September. The interest rate that we do pay those communities that hold funds has dropped to 2.85%, and again, that's reflecting the term deposit rates that we provide. So that's how we set that.
I'm sorry, Robbie?
Yes, I'm just looking at the floating. Shane Dyson seems to be in the rates on it. I don't know if it's going to go too much lower. Do we look at that? Look at that ratio, because I think interest rates might be on the up from here, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that has been certainly discussed. I think we're in an odd position, just the period as we're moving to move debt away to another entity who will then be responsible for it. We've just got to try and keep that at the forefront, making sure that we don't commit too much to longer term until we know what effect it's going to have on the risk as well. Yeah, I suppose way back when the previous reforms for Three Waters, way back in 2022, we had the DIA telling us to make sure that if you take out debt, get it to mature on the 30th of June 2024. So we were going to have never did that because that didn't comply with any of our Treasury maturity profiles. But yes, it would have been carnage if we all of a sudden had the significant amount of our debt all maturing on the 30th of June 24.
Thanks, Jason. Okay. What else have we got here? For the swaps and
Yeah, so the rest of the interest rate swaps, we've got total swaps in place, 55 million. 29 of them are forward swaps, so they are looking out a number of years to create some certainty about the interest rates at that point, or they are replacing existing interest rate swaps that will mature at that particular point in time. And page 89 is just the depiction of where we are, where cost of funds being in blue, and where the relative rates between the 90-day bank bill rate and the official cash rate. And the official cash rate did move in, I think it was November, down to 2.25%, but the underlying market rates are sitting about 2.5% now. So when the next review of the official cash rate in a couple of weeks' time might be revealing whether there's actually a slight increase.
so completes the financial reward. Have you got any?
That's me.
That's you? Oh, look, I just want to, I do appreciate the way the manner in which you answer the questions that are raised as we go through these pages, because, you've got a depth of history with us, and, being able to actually kind of get a story behind the numbers is really important for everybody's understanding, so thank you. But we do have a recommendation on page 67, and we have received this information. Is anybody of the mind to move? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tom. There is no further commentary. I'll put that motion in agreement, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Motion's carried. Thanks very much, Jason. Appreciate
Just
it.
thinking out loud, it will be worthwhile to get our Treasury advisors in to do the workshop in the next couple of months. And that will give us a bit of a focus on not just council, but what will happen with the water service, with the water organisation as well, who will be providing advice. So I'll make a point of getting them in for that.
Yeah, and maybe make sure all councillors, it's a full open invitation for all councillors. Good. Yeah, fantastic. Cool. Thanks very much. Rightio, we've got another couple of information items on our agenda today. No surprises for anybody. The Lagoona requests, I have found the right place in the agenda here, Graham. So that's good. Thank you. And nothing new here, but perhaps we just want to take us, and then we'll see if there's any questions, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so the standard report, number 1 and 2 are kind of lingering. We requested extension, and they're down to workload pressure. We haven't been able to respond to those yet, so still on our list to do. The number 6 and 7 have now been done. They were both replied to on the 23rd of January, so they're closed off, and there wasn't any information with those. So I think other than that, I'm just happy to take questions.
Wonderful, thanks, Graham. Any questions on perhaps those 9? Anything there? Thank you, Robbie.
Oh, I just noted number 6. I know it's specific around pools, but it's something I've got to think about here, because I know Emily Domain's a big domain with multi-sports, and there's no women's changing rooms. So it's sort of something that we probably need to be getting off the program a little bit. I think sisters out there doing it themselves. But it's in the past that would have just been the way it was with rugby clubs and everything else. But now it's something we have to be pretty aware of.
I guess that perhaps in regard to this, can you just give us an overview of what that request was, talking about how do we provide it, or what was the thing behind the requirement? Are you able to give us that explanation, because it might furnish some of these questions?
Yes, ma'am, I think the main focus is on transgender issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the provision of toilets for genders.
Okay, that's great, thank you, and yeah, we will, I guess we need to consider that as time goes on, or depending where it sits for us.
Yes, they're implementing the actions to come out of it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, great, thank you. Any other questions in regard to any of the requests written? Checking the case, looking to receive that information. Coming up there, Fiona, seconder, Vince. Happy with that, all in agreement, please say aye. Okay. Motion's carried, thank you. So this, here again, we've become very used to this report. Hamish, this is the monthly performance report that we've put measures in place in regard to,
Yep.
Thank
So
you.
there's only two things to note in the report. So the first one was the water supply division fault resolution, median hours, and they are up over the target, partly due to the skeleton crew over the Christmas break, which forces it out a bit. There's the ability to, of course, come back on that one over time, so that could be dragged back in line. And the other one was the recycling volumes, and we are receive waste without saying we need that motorway until we get more recycling or whatever. They are what they are. We're simply a receiver of that stream. So those are the only two that were in there for the month. Happy for any questions down there.
Oh, thank you very much. And in some regard to the measures that you see, or some explanatory notes, thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Mayor, question to the CEO is more of a perhaps a direction. As I sit on the waste board thing with the chairman, I have been contacted by several others about waste, and it has lifted my eyes. And I was wondering, what is it that we could possibly do to try and get to that 31%? I know we're close at times, but it just seems like we get right to the gate and then we kind of don't get there. Is it? It's really perception, isn't it, out there in the public, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the target's aspirational. More education about recycling. Trying to stop. I mean, the whole purpose is trying to stop recycling going into the waste stream.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the more that we can educate people about not putting recycling into the black bags, the better. Other than that, you know, you can import recycling to boost your numbers or whatever, but sensible. The best thing we can do is try and help our communities understand what can go in recycling. Remembering that, you know, the rules change for recycling, and, you know, a few years ago they changed considerably to restrict streams, because we only want recycling in the recycling streams of stuff that's saleable.
Yeah.
And if it can't be recycled, then it's not recycling. So.
And I think, you know, we've done a lot of discussion over the years around the use of, you know, things at people's gateways as opposed to the bags that we provide, and particularly around getting clean, recyclable in our clear plastic bags. Certainly we get a higher non-contamination rate because of that, whereas sometimes if you've got a bin at the front gate, it's quite easy to throw in your rinsed baked bean can, you know, and that actually contaminates the whole product. So, you know, so there are some sort of measures that we have in place that to support achieving, you know, the 31% that you talked about. But yeah, thank you. A couple of questions here, so Robbie and then
Does the ag recovery stuff and even more weight, the tyre collection, buyback scheme, whatever, does that feature in our numbers at all?
I'd have to go away and get you an answer.
So
there,
they're
but
both
we don't know that off
recycling
the top of the head.
facilities, whether or not they come under us or different organisation.
Yeah, I don't have an answer there off the top of my head. I'll have to go away and get you an answer. I'll email it out to the councillors.
I think we certainly asked, you know, we while back around the ag recovery, that actually it's got to be timely for farmers, you know, when they collect the stuff, that they need to be able to get it, rather than actually putting out of our season of, you know, haylage wrap or whatever, you know, it's got to be, have a seasonal impact to encourage that, and I think it's a totally worthwhile product, because it's actually the rinsed spray containers, and you know, so there's some good stuff that happens in that space, but we all want to aspire to that, so we've got to help and coach people through that. Elaine.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor, just through the chair. Just purely coincidentally, actually, because I have had over the last 2 weeks 3 different constituents contact me about the difficulty of accessing the recycling bags. So happy to use them, but particularly over the Christmas period, you know, one of the places where they would like to access them often doesn't have them in stock, and I did get some answers about why that is, but I just wonder how much of an impact that is having when we've got you know, an ageing population in Amberley who aren't necessarily able to, they can't access those bags, they can't get them to can't get their recycling to the transfer station, and if there's something to be done through the operational side of the business in regards to how do we make those bags more available, is there a way? And is that having an impact or not? But I don't need an answer to that, just I'll leave it with.
So more outlets is what you're saying?
Yeah, or ensuring that the outlets that are more commonly visited by residents, I will say, without naming a particular outlet, actually do have them in stock, because,
I haven't heard that from other parts of the community.
It's really interesting that I've had that 3 times in 2 weeks, yeah.
Okay, interesting,
So,
thanks Dave.
yeah. It might be having an impact.
As someone that's probably trialled these new clear plastic bags and trialled my wheelie bin with my black bag in it, clear plastic bags reduce the amount of recycling I can do. It's the amount of stuff I can get in that clear bag is not a lot. Where if I'm good and do my bag and take it to the Amberley, tip it in there, I recycle. So I have given up on clear plastic bags because of the effort of, the amount of stuff you can get them in is not a lot. Where if I've got a big rubbish bag and container, I can actually recycle this cardboard and I can recycle everything else. So it might be a bit shut. So it's just an observation of someone that did go and buy these clear bags and then decided I didn't like that system. Because I must recycle more than all you guys. That's all I think.
Recyclers at our place, Dave.
Okay, I'm going to bring you back to the monthly performance report, not Dave's habits at home. So is there any further questions that you have in regard to the people that we have in front of us? That being the case, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Paul. Pauline, sorry. Thank you, Pauline has moved and Chris Carthy is seconding that. I've got that motion, all in agreement, please say aye. Aye. Motion is carried, thank you. Radio councillors, that does bring us to the end of our open agenda. You will have read that we have a set of minutes and an item for decision in public excluded. I'm making an assumption that you agree that the reason for going into public excluded, Graham, you just might want to clarify a minor error.
Yes, Madam Mayor, the reason for item 8.1 is the negotiations reason rather than privacy.
Yeah.
The reason that those minutes were discussed in B last time was because it's a negotiating round. It's not a privacy. So it's section 7 to I.
Okay. So just for that piece of clarity, so thank you for that, Graham. And that being the case, is someone willing to please support and move that we go into the, thank you, Steve. And Peter Brett for seconding that, all in agreement with that, please say aye. Aye. That motion is carried. So we just have a minute or two